welcome everybody. I'm just going to get started with a little presentation about CREW, Communities Responding to Extreme Weather. And my name is Margaret. I'm a fellow at Communities Responding to Extreme Weather. Welcome to Climate Preparedness Week. This is one of about 50 events that we're having over this week and next. And it's a partnership of Communities Responding to Extreme Weather, the Massachusetts Library System, and the Blue Marble Librarians. And CREW started about 2 years ago to help build climate resilience through education, service, and planning. We think it's really important to make sure that communities are prepared for climate change and can respond to them equitably and sustainably and collaboratively. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel Spurling for more introductions.
Hi and welcome. My name is Rachel Spurling. I'm the librarian for environmental studies at Yale University's Marx Science and Social Science Library. I'm going to introduce our moderator and our panelists, and then play a couple of short videos that illustrate some of the work they're doing. And then I'll turn it over to our panelists. If you have any questions for our panelists, please use the Q&A function. It should be toward the bottom of your Zoom screen. So our moderator today is Enet Mukurazita. Enet is an international development practitioner with Women at Heart. She graduated from Brandeis University in 2019 with an MA in Sustainable International Development. She has more than 20 years of working experience in her native country of Zimbabwe, of which half were in development. She's currently working on her doctorate at the University of Minnesota in Comparative and International Education program with an interest in education of women in the Global South. And then our panelists, I'll start with Caroline Mutimbanyoka. With over 20 successful community development initiatives under her belt, Caroline is a human rights activist, a feminist, a facilitator, and a community development Pan-Africanist educator who has developed her career to amplify the voices of women and girls. Caroline is the founder of Sprout Women Empowerment Trust, which is a community-based organization that has become a voice for the underprivileged women in the peri-urban areas. Through her work, Caroline advocates for women's rights and food justice. Saliwe Mutetwa-Zakariya is the founding director of Talia Women's Network and is driven by a personal vision for women, girls, and youth to attain the freedom to experience wholeness in terms of health, education, and enterprise opportunities. Meaning dew from heaven, Talia exists to provide sustenance for women, girls, and youth, offering integrated socio-economic and health support. Thandiwe Chidavarume is the director of Women Land Zimbabwe. Thandiwe holds a Master's of Science in Strategic Management and an honors degree in Politics and Administration, and has over 10 years of experience in management. Since July 2012, she has led Women and Land in Zimbabwe after successfully managing a 4-year EC-funded project on women's rights under Action Aid International Zimbabwe. She also has mobilized rural women to form the Rural Women's Assembly in Zimbabwe and the Rural Women's Land Movement. So now I'm going to play a few videos that will show you a little bit more about the work that these women have been doing. And this is for Sprout.
Chitungwiza is a town in Zimbabwe that is 30 kilometers away from the capital city of Harare. And the main challenges that are being faced by the population in Chitungwiza are hunger and poverty, which are the results of climate change, the dire economic situation, and have been worsened by the global pandemic. The cutting down of trees for firewood has been rampant because of power cuts. Environmental pollution is also high because of littering and poor service delivery. And there is also a serious water crisis.
Papa batamuka makuseni na 3 chaiyo takangogarira panze papa. Time yatinongoona mvura ndo time yatinonodya. Mvura yacho kana yekumwa chete tisina. Saka kuti uwane kugesa maoko kana kuti kuflasha toilet yayo iwane.
The water shortages mainly affect women as they have to travel long kilometers to search for water. According to the Global Food Crisis Report forecast of April 2020, Zimbabwe remains in the grip of severe food insecurity. Millions of people already require humanitarian assistance.
As a response to these challenges, and in line with the Sustainable Development Goals number 1 and 2, Sprout Women Empowerment Trust is an initiative that is formed to address the socio-economic challenges faced by women in peri-urban communities by empowering them with effective life skills like agricultural farming in small spaces. Sprout Women Empowerment Trust mainly focuses on peri-urban communities because most of the current efforts to empower women by different players have been mainly in the rural areas.
Ini ndinonzi Gogo Chibaya, tinogara Muzengeza 3. Takatanga project yedu yeSprout. Saka project takatanga tichiita zvemushroom. Taiwana muriwo pa project iyo yaitibatsira tichiwana muriwo. Tichitengesa tichiwanawo tumari twataiwana. Asi ainyotinetsa inyaya yenzvimbo nokuti nzvimbo yange iri diki plus mvura yaitinetsa.
Other initiatives by Sprout Women Empowerment Trust have been soap making, sandals making, hydroponics training, and backyard gardens.
Ndinoitwa Priscilla Mangwiro, ndiri member yeSprout. Tiri kuita maprojects akasiyana siyana including garden as ladies tichirarama tiri mucommunity kuti zviri kutibatsirawo kuchengeta mhuri dzedu, kubatsirawo vamwe mucommunity medu vanouyawo vachitengawo from us. And we have machallenges atinawo emvura. Mvura haisi kuuya patepi. Kuti tikwanise kudiridza magarden edu, we need mari kuti titenge mvura, and we need space. Hatina space hombe yekuti tikwanise kunge tichirima zvinhu zvedu.
And this is the video for Thalia Women's Network.
My name is Saliwe Mutetwa-Zakariya. I'm the director at Thalia Women's Network. Our organization's mission is to empower women and girls with life skills to enable them to harness socio-economic opportunities so that they live economically empowered, morally astute, and successful lives for themselves and their communities. One of our program pillars which we are implementing here in Mashonaland Central is on economic empowerment and livelihoods with two major aims. The first is to increase household food security, and secondly is for them to give them the capacity to generate a surplus from their agricultural ventures so that they earn an income from what they are selling. We have seen the impact of climate change in the work that we are doing. Firstly, we've seen drying up of water sources, the rainfall patterns are erratic, and so in our program initiatives, we give them the skills and the capacity to be able to maximize their agricultural potential despite the changes in climate change.
Patairima kudhara mvura yanga irimo mumagadheni but ke zvinezvi muna kana mvura makaoma asi tine shungu dzokuti dai tarimo mbeu tione kuriritira idzo mhuri dzedu dzatinadzo.
Muno mugadheni randakauya kuzorima through changing climate uye tine mamwe machallenges ekuti izvizvi muriwo iwoyu imwe nguva tikaenda nawo kumusika tinosangana nemusika usinganyatsofunctiona zvakanaka uine mari shoma apa musika chinenge chitidhurei mapuraisi ekunge tichitengesa tiri imomo yatinobhadhara kukanzuru saka tinozopesa taakutora muriwo iwoyu taakutemha tonoisa kudhaya kwatinochifusha semadzimai etalia women's networks takapiwa solar dryer irori tiri kutofusha miriwo yakaita serepi viscosi cabbage zvinana mutsine munyemba munyevhi mbora zvinhu zvatiri kusangana nazvo tichifusha nemadomasi chaiyo rinofushwa takadzidzwa kunzi mango chaiyo inofushwa hatifani kuita chinhu chatinorasa.
We also equip them with knowledge on other potential income sources such as poultry farming, road runners, broilers, because these ventures require less water for them to be able to be successful.
Zvinoshanda kufuya huku nonyaya yeproblem yemvura. Huku ndofuya dzemazai nedzechibhoyi ndichitengesa kuti ndiwane mari tadzidziswa namai Zakariya kuti munhu womukadzi akufanira kugarira maoko chimirira murume.
We have established a nutrition garden at one of the primary schools, and from the proceeds from this garden we are able also to provide to the school feeding program. 700 school children from this community receive a meal daily.
Okay, and the final video is from Women Land Zimbabwe.
Climate change is affecting the livelihoods of communities across the world, with Africa being the most affected. In Zimbabwe, 80% of women reside in rural areas and are living off agriculture. The erratic weather patterns caused by the phenomenon are resulting in very high temperatures, extremely cold winters, droughts and floods, which negatively impact farming activities. Due to prolonged dry spells, the water table has dropped, leaving a significant number of water sources dry. This is presenting challenges for farmers such as Evelyn Gware and Tracy Mwaramidze.
Tikufamba mufambo wakakura wokuti tiwane mvura. Chechipiri tiri kuafektwa zvakanyanya pazvipfuyo zvedu zvatinazvo, mombe shoma dzakasara nembudzi dzese dziri kushaya mvura yekunwa. Taakutoita zvekudzidhaira pazvibhorani. Zvibhorani zvacho zvatova zvishoma, zvimwe zvaoma, hazvichakwanisa kubuda mvura.
Pakubhadhara mari dzezvikoro taibhadhara nekuda kwezvirimwa zvatinenge tarima, plus ndo pataiwana chikafu chedu chevana vedu chakakwana. Saka iye zvino izvi zvakutiremera pakuti vana hatichawani mari yekuvabhadharira vechikoro, vana vari kuroorwa vari vadiki, endi ratova dambudziko mudzimba, vana vari kurwa mudzimba nekuda kwechikafu chishoma.
In its drive to promote productivity by rural women farmers and to equip them with knowledge to cope with climate change, Women and Land in Zimbabwe has been carrying out awareness campaigns on the realities of climate change. According to Thandiwe Chidavarume, Women and Land in Zimbabwe National Coordinator, they have been educating women on mitigation and adaptation strategies.
We are implementing smart agriculture solutions in the manner of awareness raising on climate change, and we are also encouraging farmers to practice conservation agriculture. We are also in the process of establishing low-cost solar-powered irrigation scheme, and we are also promoting agroecology and also formation of eco-villages.
Due to the decreased rainfall volumes, Women and Land in Zimbabwe is encouraging rural women to practice crop diversity and invest in the production of small grains and livestock.
Tikwanisa kuchengeta tumaroad runner huku dzedu dzepamba nembudzi, nekuti mbudzi hadzinyanyodi mvura yakawanda, ukangodzipa mvura shoma dzinogona kumwa dzikatorarama. Pakurima chaiwo taakutorima zvinhu zvakaita sezviyo nemapfunde, endi tiri kutoita dhiga udye tobva taita mulching kuti unyoro hurege kukasika kuenda.
The non-governmental organization has facilitated the creation of study circles where women in the areas they work come together in groups of between 7 and 15 to discuss and proffer solutions to challenges they are facing. The circles are playing a significant role in disseminating knowledge on climate change.
And now it's my honor and pleasure to turn the metaphorical microphone over to Enet Mukurazita.
Thank you, Rachel, for that wonderful introduction. We're going to be talking to Thandiwe, Saliwe, and Caroline, and we're going to start off with you, Thandiwe. If you could just explain to us the work that you're doing at Zimbabwe, at Women Land Zimbabwe. How many women are you able to reach out to in your climate change program, and what other interventions in terms of climate change are you working on as an organization?
Thank you. As an organization, Women and Land in Zimbabwe, we are working with close to 43,000 women in 10 districts of Zimbabwe. These are rural districts. What we are doing as an organization, first of all, we are raising awareness about climate change because women did not understand what was causing them not to have their produce reach to maturity. They were facing many challenges in terms of long dry spells within a rainfall period. So we had to go and do awareness raising about climate change and mitigation and adaptation, how to adapt. Apart from what you saw in the video of what we are doing in terms of sourcing funds to establish low-cost irrigation schemes, so far we have 3 low-cost irrigation schemes, and we are still looking for more funds to establish more. And we are also training our women farmers to look outside the box in terms of coming up with other income-generating projects. When their crops have failed, they can sell whatever they would be producing. Like we have a group in Gweru who are making laptop bags from threads, and we are also having a group who are also doing poultry, and another group that is also into buying and selling. We are encouraging women to look at implementing other off-farm activities so that in terms of their livelihood, they will find something to go and buy food for their families. That's what we are doing as Women in Land. Thank you.
Thank you, Thandiwe. Now, over to you, Caroline. You are focusing on peri-urban women. One would not have thought that maybe they are also having climate change shocks. Please, can you describe to us why you decided to focus on peri-urban women, and what is the impact of climate change on these women that you're working with?
Well, thank you, Enet. As we are in the peri-urban spaces, we are equally being affected with climate change. Way back, we never used to worry about water shortages, about electric power cuts, but these are the situations that has become our reality today. You saw on the video the cutting down of trees, things that we're expecting to happen in the rural areas, but we see that happening as well in the peri-urban spaces. And these have created many other challenges that are coming from that. We have issues such as abuse of women as they go to water points because they travel a long distance, and they wake up really early in the morning, and that is now becoming very rampant. We have violence erupting at water points. as a result of the water shortages that women are facing. We also have women and girls being raped due to like the distances that I've mentioned. And with the COVID situation again, we are seeing that we can only talk about social distance when you are not in such an environment, as women are struggling for water. The situation of just having many people in that same space and fighting for this precious commodity, people do not observe the distances. They don't even think about wearing masks and all the other challenges that are coming as a result of the situations that we are facing in the peri-urban spaces. So yes, we are highly feeling the impact of climate change and the other problems that are coming from that.
Thanks, Caroline. Now, Saliwe, you work with both women and girls. And in your work, please can you explain to us why women and why girls?
So the focus of our work is mostly in the rural areas. And for economic empowerment and livelihoods project, we are working in Mashonaland Central. 68% of the population of Zimbabwe is based in the rural areas. And we see that the majority of them are women and girls. Because the men and the males, the boys, they move out of the rural areas into the urban areas to seek for employment and other economic opportunities. So as we are focusing our work in rural Mashonaland Central, we've seen that the majority of the population is women and girls. These women and girls have a low educational attainment. Most of them dropped out of school at grade 7 or Form 2 or O-level for marriage, or in a variety of reasons, such as lack of finances for school fees. And our economy being agro-based, women are in the rural areas and they're mostly the caregivers of the elderly and also of the young. So we saw that by empowering the women and girls, we are able then to empower the family and the household income levels at that level. So we also see that in terms of the impact of climate change, being agro-based, they rely on firewood mostly for energy sources. They also rely on water for their agricultural productivity and also for household purposes. And with the changing climate, with the changing seasons, it's also affected the productivity, the household nutrition level. So in our work, we are trying to see how we can increase the income that the women and girls bring into the homes. We are also trying to see how we can impact the women because they make most of these household decisions. What does the family eat with regards to nutrition levels and nutrition outcomes? Lowering the levels of malnutrition. So if the mother is empowered to make the right decisions for her nutrition outcomes for the families, we see that there is also the changes are translated to the whole family. We also see that since they are also in the agricultural space, the women and girls are not earning as much as they're supposed to because they sell their commodities in the raw form. It's just straight from the garden to the market. So in our initiatives, we are also trying to impact to them issues such as value addition, so that as they add value to the products, they'll be able to earn more income and therefore send their children to school. If someone falls sick, they are able to seek healthcare services. So that's why our work is major. We focus on the women and girls.
Thanks, Saliwe. Now, coming back to you, Thandiwe, we want to find out in terms of the gender roles that women have in the communities that they live in. How is this playing out in the interventions that you're bringing to the different communities?
Thank you. Like my colleague has just said that women in the rural areas, they've got a responsibility to put food on the table. It's a community expectation to see women producing food, processing food, and then putting the food on the table. So with climate change, we have seen that this gender role has been affected. And in our culture, in the Zimbabwean culture, if you are a woman and you fail to do that role, you are regarded as a failure. So we have seen climate change really affecting that women's role. And we also have noted that in terms of the reproductive role, women have to care for the children. They have to produce enough food with enough nutrients to look after their kids. So with climate change, we are seeing women failing to do that. And as a result, it looks as if they are now a failure. They failed to do their part in the family of looking after and producing healthy children. And at community level, we have also noted that the community, according to our Zimbabwean culture, the community, they have their expectations from women. For example, there's someone who is sick in the community. The women are supposed to go and help, and also help with food, and also prepare a meal for the sick. And then at funerals, the women are also supposed to be producing relish at such gatherings. And we have noted that because of climate change, that role the women are failing to play. And in some marriages, in some families, we have seen that this is triggering domestic violence, with men hitting their wives for failing to produce or to put food on the table. So we are noting a lot of disturbances in many families and in many communities because of climate change.
Thank you, Thandiwe. I'm going to come back to you, Saliwe, where you say that you are really concentrating on women and girls because they are the majority of the population in the rural areas. Now, Thandiwe noted that there's an increase in domestic violence because there's not enough food being put on the table by the women. So, are you, as an organization, making an effort to include men in your interventions?
Definitely, Enet. We've also noted the high incidence of domestic violence, particularly this year with the COVID-19 pandemic. And in March, the whole country went on lockdown. So you'd see that the majority of the men who were based in the urban areas and working there, they were forced to return to their rural homes. And they also needed now to adjust living together and all these issues that are raising up. So as an organization, we started an initiative where we are having community dialogue sessions with all the stakeholders of the community. So for starters, before we start the program, we have the men also involved to create awareness of what we are doing with the women, because women, despite being the ones putting the food on the table, they still need to seek for permission to be able to participate in such initiatives as these. So in the dialogue sessions, we are explaining the programs that we are doing and how they would benefit not just the woman, but then the family at large. So whether it's the husbands or uncles, whoever are the guardians, we also include them. And then we are also saying, rather than rely on the traditional gender roles that we see, that we are used to from our Shona culture, how can men also be involved in some of the domestic care work that women are burdened with? So in these sessions, that's where you hear conversations like, we can't be seen to be doing the cooking, we can't be seen to be doing the washing. But when you explain everything that, you know, from the time the woman wakes up to the time she goes to bed, what she has to go through, that's when we are starting slowly to create an awareness, because some of them really, they're not really conscious of the time that the woman is laboring for the family. So in these dialogue sessions, we are seeing a shift. It's slight, but the shift is there, that they are starting to appreciate that I can also fetch the firewood. So as they are going around in the village on their bicycles, they also start collecting firewood. They also start seeing that we need to protect our women at the water sources. So you see that it's men now, because they are now aware, they will also provide the security for women, because like my colleague mentioned, the violence and the abuse that happens to women in these places has been high. So in these dialogue sessions, we are seeing an awareness, and a willingness to alleviate some of the issues that the women are facing. But I have to point out it's a process, because all these things are culturally ingrained. But at least when you see change one, and then they learn from there, you know that in the long run will make more of an impact with the men as well.
Okay. Now, coming back to you, Caroline, I want to find out from the urban perspective, what can be done to assist these women, adapt to climate change in an urban area? What else can be done? Because the urban space is a bit constricted. There are many rules and regulations and organizations, institutions, structures that really control the urban space. So what else can be done to ensure that these women can adapt to climate change in the urban space that you work in?
The situation in the urban spaces, and it requires a lot of working together from the women's side, and also in involvement with our duty bearers. As you have noted, that the urban spaces are very areas that not that you can actually not exercise farming. It's something that they have not legitimized. It's something that is starting to come up, or something that people have been doing or experiencing, but it's not structured. So we're beginning now to bring in the duty bearers as well as the women to say, look, this is the situation that we are facing. Food shortages is a real issue, and we need to look into starting to open up our community spaces, to create gardens, so that we can ensure that we provide food for the needy in our communities. So we are opening spaces to have dialogues with the duty bearers, and I must say that it is not an easy process. We've been looking for space, I think it's over a year now, and we are still discussing issues of space. But then we are also looking into how we can have our gardens in the small spaces, especially coming together and work with women or those who have backyards that we can maximize. So you find that we are doing mushroom farming, but we are using someone else's backyard. So that's a group of women coming together and teaming up and saying, we have one woman who's got a space that we can actually utilize at her backyard. And we're seeing that working. But it's also not something that is sustainable, Enet, because if one person decides then to lock a gate today, you cannot actually go back and say, can you please open for us? So we're really fighting so that we have these community spaces open, learning hubs, so that we can bring in the women to learn how to maximize their small spaces, or to team up so that they can actually start doing farming at a small scale, but get they really maximize what they get out of those small spaces. And just like my colleagues, we're also looking into drying the products that we're making. Now you saw on the video the drying of mushrooms. We're also drying our cabbages. We're also drying get the ready market when our things are fresh. And so we're hoping that we can prolong and sell our products as dry products, try and put them in the shop so that they can have a longer shelf life. And we are getting into other projects as well. Sandals making, we are taking really scrap materials that they will be wanting to dispose, and we are saying, can we recycle or create something out of this these materials that are being disposed? And by so doing, we are now starting to encourage women to think about separating their waste. Can we have bins that we can actually separate? Can we dig compost so that we can put our degradable materials there? And so those are the initiatives that we are bringing, but largely maybe to create spaces of engagement. I think that is really important that we are getting into, because we have seen the us and them situation where the duty bearers do not have spaces to dialogue with the citizens and really get to the solutions that we need to speak to the challenges that we have. So we are creating those spaces as well, and I think it's an opportunity for better things to come.
Wonderful. Now, Thandiwe, what are the hopes and the concerns of these women farmers that you work with?
the rural women who rely on rain-fed agriculture, they continue to hope that they will get good rainfall, but because of climate change, they are failing to get the right amount of rainfall they need for them to be effective and very productive and produce enough to feed their families, and surplus to sell and use to pay for other households requirement. So their hopes, they continue to be shattered. As a result, they are hoping that one day they would find somebody to assist in terms of availing water for them to irrigate their plots, their fields, so that whenever they fail to get enough rainfall, they irrigate to supplement whatever God would have provided for them. Then their concerns are in the sense that they send their children to school using money they get from farming. They pay for their medical bills whenever they are sick or their children are sick. They pay using the money they get from the fields. But because for the past decade, they have not been producing enough for them to eat and surplus for them to sell so that they can have extra income. So they are saying in the long run, they are no longer sending their children to school. In the long run, they are no longer accessing medical facilities because of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Thandiwe. I'm gonna turn over to Rachel and find out if she's got any questions for our panelists. Rachel, do we have any questions?
Yes, we do. We have three, and they're not directed at any one panelist, so I will open them to all of you, and I'll just go in order. So the first question, someone in one of the videos mentioned the challenge of the cost of selling. What does that cost involve?
Okay, I can respond to that because I think it was in our video. So with regards to the cost of selling, the major cost for the women, because they are producing in the rural areas, is the cost of transport to carry their produce into the urban areas and to the urban markets. We have the marketing system has largely been driven from the rural areas to the urban areas, into the markets, into the formal market space. So the transport costs, sometimes they have to hire vehicles or trucks to ferry their produce to the market. And when transport costs also include the fuel costs and all that they have to also then incorporate. So that takes a huge chunk of what are supposed to be the earnings. We also see that the urban markets are also controlled by the urban councils, the city councils. And so these farmers or the sellers, they also have to pay for permits or daily rates for them to get the space for them to be selling in those spaces on a particular day. So the rates fluctuate and they vary. So all these are also feeding into the cost of selling for the women farmers. And then finally, we also have markets such as here in Harare, one of the largest vegetable market is Mbare Musika. And it's controlled, for lack of a better term, there is what you can call a mafia behind the market, such that apart from only paying to the council for them to be able to sell, there are gangs there who give women or the sellers access into the market. So they also then have to pay these people as well. So all these things are accumulating into what was supposed to be the profit for the rural woman when she came with her produce. When she gets there, the prices are also market controlled. So you can get there and they tell you vegetables are selling for $15 Zimbabwean dollars a bundle. So rather than her factoring in her cost of production, her transport costs and everything in determining the price, she's also now just having to sell at that market determined price. So that's what she meant in the video on the cost of selling.
Thank you. We got a few more questions. Let's see, the next one is, what are some ways that people can help?
Okay, I think I'll start and maybe others can actually add. In our space, I think mostly when we started with these interventions, there were interventions that were driven by passion, and learning is coming afterwards as a way of seeing that we can actually do so much more when we have learned and gotten some expertise on some of the work that we are doing. So really one way that we can actually get help is through imparting knowledge in us, so that we can be very effective in our interventions. The second thing that we need, especially for us as a small organization, ours, if you noted, we started in 2018, and this is like our third year. And with the COVID and everything, it has slowed us down. And one thing that has been really challenging for us is the issue of resources. It doesn't really sometimes have to be monetary, but just having even the seeds that we need so that we can get the women to plant in their backyards has been a challenge. Just to get because when we are dealing with these women, some of them do not even own a piece of land. They don't even have those spaces. So we're looking into mobile gardens. How can we do that better? How can we ensure that we have gardens that someone can actually then say, if I'm moving from one place to the next, I can actually take my garden with and still ensure that my family is fed. So the issue of resources has played out as a huge obstacle that we have towards going ahead. And I think one other thing is an issue of networking and learning from others. We have limited spaces where we can actually engage, learn from others, and have resources so that we can do the knowledge exchange. That is something that we really need, so that women are exposed to what others are doing. They also learn how to do better in whatever it is that we'll be doing through learning from others. And just like what my other colleague was saying, I think the issue of identifying of markets in terms of the produce, the products that we are making, we are now sitting with quite a lot of veggies, quite a lot of tomatoes that we are drying, and we are looking into maybe how can we export our products so that we are not robbed of the energy and labor that we put into the work that we are doing by the middlemen that she was pointing out, or the mafia that will be trying to rip us off. I think I'll end here and allow my other colleagues to just add.
Yeah, to also add on to what she has just said, as for rural women who rely on agriculture for a living, and because of climate change is real in Zimbabwe, and it's affecting women, and it's women who are mostly affected. Why? Because like we have mentioned in the videos that women, they constitute a bigger percentage of those who are living in rural areas. And the bulk of the people who live in rural areas, they rely on agriculture for a living. And research has shown that 80% of the agricultural labor in the rural areas is provided by women. So without water, it means the labor for women is going for nothing. So the help that I also want to add from what my colleague has just said is provision of water. How can we draw water and put it closer to the women who want to use it? So the issue of the solar powered irrigation schemes, the low cost irrigation schemes, is one way we can help the women in the rural areas. Thank you.
And then just finally on how people can help, particularly this year with the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen that technology is the way to go. With regards to reaching out to the women, with regards to climate smart technologies, the list can go on and on. So access to resources and access to technology platforms for these women as well, because we've seen that one other thing that they need is they're hungry for knowledge. They want to know and to learn and to make their lives better. But now without the necessary infrastructure, even the necessary, for example, with climate change, we can talk about weather information and climate, the variations in the seasons. But without a smartphone, she cannot tell what the rainfall patterns will be or how different the weather is going to be and how she can plan for it. So these are simple solutions which are now available, but we don't have access to the technology for them to be doing that. And then one other thing on how people can help is just everyone realizing that it's collective effort. When you talk about climate change, it's not just a Zimbabwe situation. Your actions that you do in the United States, in China, in Mexico, wherever you are, they affect the whole globe. So I think we now need to get to a point where we get this collective responsibility in trying to see how we can make the world better. Now that people would be aware of how these changes, because when you look at the African continent with regards to the gas emissions and all that, we are really low, but we also feel the impact with regards to rainfall. So when we have these conversations at a global platform, we should know that our actions in America, in Mexico, in Europe, they affect the grassroots person in Africa and in Zimbabwe or wherever. So we should have this bond of collective responsibility and seeing how we can make the world better for everyone.
So we have time for just one more question. We did receive quite a large number suddenly right at the end, so I copied them, and we're going to try to have our panelists address them on Facebook afterward because we're getting close to time. So the final question, what is your message to folks in high emitter, high consumer countries like the US who are much more responsible for the impacts of climate change but have not yet felt the severity of the crisis at home?
I think let me just pick it up from where Saliwe left off to say that this is just a collective, something that should happen, not just to look at how that is being done there, but to have spaces like this where we continuously talk about it, where people can actually see the effects of how people are being affected on the ground. It is sort of like a wake-up call. It gives you quite a picture of the situation on the ground, and it forces you to just go back to your person, because I believe that change starts with you as a person to say, what is it that I can do differently so that the other person cannot feel the pain that I'm causing to this to climate change and this situation that we're talking about. So change should start with us as individuals to say, how can I do things differently? How can I impart knowledge to that person who has no idea, who is in the rural areas, like what Saliwe is saying? How can I make their situation better? And it's a collective effort. It's not just one person who's supposed to be saying, this is what you're doing. I don't think we're in that space anymore. It's high time we look at things as we move forward to say, this is our reality. How can we make tomorrow better? Yeah.
Just to add that all these past years, there's been some meetings to discuss climate change, meetings called the COP meetings. I don't remember if they had met, if they were going to meet this year, which COP number they will be meeting. I last heard of COP21, COP20 something, which means they've been meeting for the past 20-something years. And my recommendation is that whenever they meet to discuss the climate change issues and come up with the recommendations, they need to take those recommendations seriously, implement them so that we can stop the changing of the climate. And then we might be able to manage at this level where we are. Because if we continue to pollute, if we continue to disturb the the ecosystem, the environment, everything, then we continue to plunge deeper into more harsher conditions. And the rural woman is the one who is at the receiving end, and she's not receiving good news, but bad news. Thank you.
I think that's probably a Q&A. Rachel, did you say that was the last question?
That's the last one we have time for.
Okay.
So I copied all of them, and I can share them with you afterwards. So you can answer them on the Facebook page. But I think it's time for the climate prep activity presentation.
Yes, so just maybe to explain a little bit on the activity that we went to just learn more or to celebrate this Climate Preparedness Week. You can go on to the next slide. So as a collective, we went to Pedstock, the collective as in the 3 organizations represented here. And we were learning there about Pedstock is an agricultural investment company that specializes in drip irrigation, greenhouses, and agricultural inputs. And our purpose was to learn and appreciate the benefits of the use of modern technology and learn how to improve efficiency in production. Next. So these are some of the pictures that are just showing what we're learning. And here he was discussing or teaching the ladies about water conservation using the drip irrigation system. The next. Yes, you can see there it's farming in small spaces and how drip irrigation can actually help with our crops. Next. And this is the greenhouse and meaning about your energy input and labor as well. Next. Yes, and he was just showing us about this is the raspberry project that they're doing and how it doesn't require so much input, but it has there's quite a lot of output that you can get from that because they sell high at the markets. Next. Yeah, and these are some of the plants that they have, the variety of plants that they're growing in the greenhouses, and the women were being taught about how they can actually also adopt some of these new crops in their farming experience. Yeah, and I think those are just a few pictures of the visit and what we were learning. I think that's just about it. The next. Yes, so the next steps for the women farmers, because when we finished, then we got an opportunity to just discuss with the women, and they wanted to have spaces where they can share knowledge with women in their communities. They said this opportunity had presented them with a chance to go and share their experience, and they also were talking about how they can analyze the setup costs, especially on the irrigation systems, to say how can they then come together and put money together so that they can also be able to afford the system. They also looked at determining the variety of crops that can be grown in the communities. So they wanted to go back and start discussing in terms of the variety on what they can grow in their own communities depending with their soil types. They also wanted a space to discuss the issue of resources, to say how can they put resources together so that they can start working on these projects. And one thing that came up was also to continuously engage Pedstock and their experts so that they can come to the communities and we can continue to engage them as we implement the programs that we'll be implementing on the ground. Next. Yeah, so just to say the partners there, like I mentioned, we had Sprout Women Empowerment Trust, Talia Women's Network, and we also had Women and Learns in Zimbabwe. Yeah, and I would like to give thanks to CREW for awarding us with that opportunity and support to be able to have that event. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. So, part of my call to action was mentioned by the panelists, and I was just saying, go women, go. You're saying exactly what I want to say, and I just felt so happy and so proud that, you know, we're thinking exactly on the same wavelength. So 35% of farmers in the USA are women. In Zimbabwe, 70% of farmers are women. As you heard the panelists saying, the majority of them live in the rural areas and they are small-scale farmers. These are the women that we're talking about here, that have the responsibility of food security for over 14 million Zimbabweans. As Thandiwe said, climate change is real. It is coming to these women fast and hard. So yes, somebody asked, what can you do to help? And as Saliwe says, each individual has a responsibility. According to research, one American contributes 16 metric tons of greenhouse gases to global warming. Now compare that to a South African, which I'm comparing to South Africa because that's the most industrialized nation in Africa. One South African contributes 8 metric tons of greenhouse gases to global warming. So in other words, countries like the USA or the industrialized nations are the ones that are contributing the most to global warming and causing this climate change, which is real for the community that Thandiwe works in. So I'm just urging everybody who's here to go back and do an audit of their own carbon footprint. How are you living? How are you contributing to this greenhouse gas? And make a change. It starts with you, the individual. It starts with you. Now, coming back to the women farmers in Zimbabwe, when we talk about help and people hear about women, everybody thinks women empowerment, which is wonderful and great. What I have experienced is that women empowerment means different things to different people. I mean, even the scholars themselves, they have a lot of definitions of women empowerment. But I believe that there's one social economist named Nalia Kabir who gave the best description of what empowerment is. It is made up of 3 building blocks. It is made up of agency, which is the ability to make decisions, access to resources, which is the medium through which the person needs to make the decision. And it's made up of opportunity, which is the structure, the rules of the games. You know, these are the laws. So if you give a woman resources and they don't have the ability to make the decision on that resource, or they live in a community that has rules, or in a country that does not allow them to use that resource, then it's a problem. You haven't empowered that woman. So what is the solution? The solution is to work with in-house experts, like these community-based organizations, like Sprout, like Talia, like Women Land Zimbabwe. They work with these women. They are Zimbabwean women themselves. They know the culture. They know what these women are dealing with. You heard them mention the fact that these women, they've limited mobility. They don't have access to information. They don't have access to resources. They know how to navigate the culture. They know the rules. They know the regulations. They know what it takes for a woman to make a decision in a rural area. So I am just urging all of you to support community-based organizations. And I'm rooting for my country as a Zimbabwean, work with these ladies because they know what is happening on the ground. As Saliwe mentioned, they know the simple solutions. So please get in touch with them so that you can make your contribution and change the lives of women, of who are really carrying the food security of millions of citizens in the countries they work in. Thank you. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you. I just want to extend a warm thank you to all of our panelists for the amazing work that you're doing and for taking the time out of your day to speak with us. To Caroline, Thandiwe, Saliwe, thank you so much for speaking on this panel, and thank you so much, Enet, for moderating and for this call to action. That's so important. Thank you to Crew for facilitating this presentation, especially to Craig for kind of organizing, and to Margaret for helping out with the tech. And thank you so much to everyone in our audience who took the time out of their day to watch and to ask questions. Again, I copied all the questions that we didn't have a chance to answer, so hopefully we'll be able to get those answers to you afterward. Oh, and some of the participants are putting their email in the chat, so if you want to follow up with them, their organizations are findable online. Yes, thank you again for attending.